Welcome to this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market. This report is for the week of November 24th to the 30th. The New York City market is still marching right along. Last week, we did see a little bit of a maybe slight pullback overall, but it was Thanksgiving, so it was a much shorter week. And so, less was happening. We'll get started right now with the luxury market. There were 19 contracts signed in the luxury market. That is 10 fewer than the previous week. So that's kind of what I mean when I say we did see a bit of a pullback in the market. I don't think that is necessarily an indicator of any changes in our market, but it is always good to keep an eye on these numbers. Condos outsold co-ops 8 to 7, and there were 4 townhouses that were signed. As I was saying, even though it was a Thanksgiving week, still, based on the 10-year look at the luxury market for Thanksgiving week, this was our best week with 19 contracts signed. Previously, the best was 17, so not bad. The number one contract was 61A at 53 West 53rd Street. It was asking $23,290,000. This was a sponsor sale. The sponsor started marketing this building back in 2015. This condo has just under 3,700 square feet, includes 3 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms. It has a corner great room, a 31-foot master bedroom. Both of those face Central Park. 53 West 53rd was designed by Jean Nouvel, with interiors by the late Terry Despont, who passed away in 2023. Amenities in this building include a concierge, fitness center, 65-foot lap pool, golf simulator, wine room, library, theater, storage, and a children's playroom. The number 2 contract was 152 West 13th Street, asking just under $20 million. It was listed at the end of September. The 4-story Greek Revival townhouse has 5,640 square feet, includes 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 2 powder rooms, and an elevator. It features a quite dramatic great room with a double height ceiling and a glass curtain wall that opens onto a landscaped garden. There are also outdoor spaces on the 3rd and 4th floors. This house last traded back in May of 2016. The seller at that time paid $15 million and then did a 2-year renovation. Their total weekly asking price sales volume for last week, $189,335,000. Average asking price, $9,965,000. Median asking price, $7,995,000. Average discount from original ask to last asking price, 16%. And average days on the market, 784. From a historical perspective, even though we did see a pullback from the previous week in terms of signed contracts in the luxury market, it was still our best week in a decade in terms of the number of signed contracts. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this upcoming week. That's it for the luxury market. Any questions, post them below. You can always reach out to me directly as Sotheby's. And right now we're going to move over, take a look at what's going on in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I'm going to wrap this up, share some mortgage information with you, as well as strategies to help you be successful if you are an active buyer or seller in this market. $90 new properties came on the market in Manhattan last week. That is down almost 59%. Contracts signed 134, also down 32%. Off-market 189 for the week. That is up almost 10%. The supply for the month in Manhattan dropped a bit, 797, down a little over 45%. Contract signed 767, also down almost 26%. Off-market 681, rose about 21%. Market pulse reading, it had been, kind of rising up in that sellers territory. However, it seems to have dropped back a bit last week. We're seeing it now more, let's call it neutral. Again, this is the balance between the supply and the demand. This liquidity pace chart, 767 contracts signed in the last 30 days. We saw that drop about 22% from last month and down around 12% from last year. Let's move on. We'll talk now about Brooklyn. Brooklyn and Manhattan have been kind of functioning a little differently from each other in this fall market. We're going to take a look at that right now. The supply in Brooklyn for last week, 51 new properties came on the market. That's a drop of almost 65%. Contracts signed, 92. That's down a little over 38%. Off market, 84. That is up almost 36%. The supply, 558 for the month, down 39%. Contract signed, 534, down almost 3%. Off market, 331. That is up a little over 24%. The Market Pulse reading, just kind of like with Manhattan, it had been kind of dropping in Brooklyn down into this buyer's market territory. We see that kind of back to a more neutral place. We're seeing a bit of a return to, at least for last week, of this kind of neutral market condition in Brooklyn. Seeing the same thing in Manhattan. With regard to the liquidity pace, if we look at the liquidity pace chart, we see that 534 contracts have been signed over the last 30 days. That is up about 2% from last month, and let's say about the same, but down from last year. That's it for Brooklyn. I'm going to wrap this up now, share some additional information with you about the market, mortgage rates, etc. If you're an active buyer or seller in this market, or you're just curious what's going on in Manhattan and Brooklyn and in the New York City market in general, be sure you stick around for that. So as I said, there were 19 contracts signed last week in the luxury market. That is down 10 contracts from the previous week, but still our best showing over the last decade for luxury contracts signed during the Thanksgiving week. 6 of those were in the trophy category, meaning they were priced at $10 million and above. 8 were condos, 7 were co-ops, and 4 were townhouses. 14 were uptown, and 5 were downtown. We take a look at the supply, overall supply for Manhattan and Brooklyn, 6,424 properties available in Manhattan, 3,400 in Brooklyn. The pending sales in Manhattan, 2,859. In Brooklyn, 1,839. Off-market properties in Manhattan, 3,833. Brooklyn, 1,861. Average days on the market in Manhattan, 78. In Brooklyn, 60. As promised, here is some mortgage news for you. We saw the rates go down a bit. They are down now in the low 6s for a 30-year fixed, lower than that for a 15-year, below 6 now. Like the rate I saw last week was 5.58% for a 15-year fixed. So pretty good. It seems that this trend is tied to signs of a weakening labor market. Expectations are that the Federal Reserve will cut its benchmark interest rate sometime in December. These are the predictions. We don't know, of course, but nice to see these rates going out. Very good chance those rates will continue to have an impact on our market, meaning as buyers are finding the rates more to their liking because they see them dropping a bit, it helps them with their buying power. So we are seeing more activity, even though Thanksgiving week wasn't a good indicator of that. We're going to keep an eye, though, because I think what happens this week will perhaps be a little more telling, because now we'll be in December and we'll see how the Manhattan and the Brooklyn market and the luxury market are performing. If you are a seller, you do have buyers out there. and they are serious and things are moving, as long as they are priced in alignment with the market. If they are not priced in alignment with current market conditions, the buyers will let you know, because they will not come and see your property. They will not make appointments. They will not be making offers. They're going to focus on those properties that they perceive as having value and are the best in their class. So if you want to be a successful seller, as I always say, make sure you are best in class. Make sure your asking price is in alignment with market conditions. Asking price is not the selling price. It is part of your strategy. Buyers, you see the rates going down. This is great news for you. If you see something you like, you may want to seriously think about making a move on it, because you are now in a position where you're starting to see prices aren't really changing that much, but if a property's been on the market for a while, very likely those sellers are going to have a little more negotiability. So I would encourage you to make offers on things, keeping in mind that we are not, from a data standpoint, seeing any real changes in the price action. As always, if you have any questions, of course, about your particular situation, I'm happy to answer those. You can post them below. You can reach out to me at Sotheby's. Always happy to help you with your real estate situations, puzzles, problems. That's it for this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market. As always, my thanks to the Olshan Luxury Report and to Urban Digs. The work they do helps me to help you to make great decisions. I'll be back next week with the very latest news on what's happening in the New York City real estate market. In the meantime, take care.